this video, you're going to master the hidden art of cropping your photos. Now, the reason I call this the hidden art is because cropping is probably one of the most underused techniques in iPhone photography, and it's really simple. It's so simple that you can literally learn it in 1 or 2 minutes. But unfortunately, it also takes a lifetime to really master cropping. Now, the one thing I can already tell you is that I often spend minutes, sometimes 5 or 10 minutes, obsessing about how I'm going to crop a particular photo, because the way you crop directly affects the composition, and the more carefully you can crop your images, the more pleasing the composition is going to be. So that's why it's so important that you pay a lot of attention to how you crop your images. So for this video, we're going to work with this original unedited photo, and I'll show you how to transform that into this edited final version, which has been carefully cropped to include the exact right elements, to cut out anything we do not need and create a pleasing composition. And in the end, I'll also quickly show you how you can create these beautiful, dramatic, deep shadows that you can see in the edited photo. But now, let me show you how you can easily crop your photos using the Snapseed app. And I'll also describe the thought process that goes into cropping so you can really improve the composition of your photos in cropping. I've already opened the photo we're going to work with, and to me, this photo is really defined by 2 things. Number one, it's the subject itself, and I like how the light falls on the back of the subject and how that illuminates the blue clothes that the subject is wearing. And I also really like the strong shadows that you can see on the wall and on the ground below the subject. So to me, these 2 things are what make this photo work. And when I'm going to crop this image, I'm going to think about ways I can further emphasize these most essential aspects of the image. But now, let me show you how to access the crop module in Snapseed. So I'm going to tap the edit icon on the right-hand side of the screen, and from here, at the top of the screen, you'll see the crop option. So I'll tap there, and now the crop module is open. And by default, the first thing that opens up at the bottom of the screen is the different aspect ratios. So you're given the option to choose between free, original, and many other aspect ratios. So let me quickly explain what these mean. Free essentially means that the ratio between the height and the width of the image is not restricted in any way, and that allows you to crop the image however you want to crop it. So if you just want to crop one side of the image and not touch the other ones, you can do that with the free aspect ratio. The original will preserve the aspect ratio that the original photo had. For example, this iPhone photo, just like all the other iPhone photos that you have, is in the 4:3 aspect ratio. So that essentially means that the width of the image is 4 units long, while the height of the image is only 3 units long. And this is the default aspect ratio that your iPhone takes photos in. The 4:3 aspect ratio is perfect for essentially viewing your photos digitally, or you can use them as wallpapers on most desktop computers. There's also the square aspect ratio, and squares work really great for social media, particularly sites like Facebook and Instagram. And the reason that squares work better there is that if you post a square photo on Instagram or on Facebook, it literally takes up more real estate on the screen. So a square photo posted on Instagram looks bigger than a horizontal aspect ratio photo would, simply because of how these social networks are set up. So an easy way to get more likes to your photos is to just crop them in square. There's also the 3:2 aspect ratio, and this is the aspect ratio you want to use for most printing needs. That's because most printing formats, such as the 4" by 6" printing format, which is really common, they come in the 3:2 aspect ratio, and because of that, if you're looking to print your photos, more often than not, you'll want to use the 3:2 aspect ratio. Now, there's also many other aspect ratios you could choose from, but my general recommendation is for you to stick to one of the classic ones, because if you use the free aspect ratio, or if you choose an unusual aspect ratio, you'll have fewer ways in which you can use your photos, because they might not fit the particular medium for which the photo is intended. I typically like to go with the original 4:3 aspect ratio, or I also like to edit my photos in squares a lot. But of course, you can use any aspect ratio you want to use for each photo. Now, let me select the original, which is the same as 4:3 here, and let me explain to you what happens when you crop a photo. So if you drag one of the corners of the image, you'll see that the part of the image that we're about to keep becomes smaller. So in many ways, cropping is the equivalent of using scissors, because if you had a photo printed out, you could then literally cut out the sides of the photo with scissors, and you'd be doing the exact same thing that we're doing with cropping. And this has some important consequences when it comes to image quality. So when you're cropping a photo, you are losing megapixels. You're literally cutting out everything else except the part that you keep, and that way the image loses resolution. So after a crop, there will always be less megapixels than you started with. And the interesting thing is that the megapixels go down quite quickly. So if we crop this image like this, so we're keeping roughly half of the original height and half the original width, what we're left with is an image that's 4 times smaller. Not 2 times smaller, but 4 times smaller. So if we're starting with a 12 megapixel iPhone photo, what we have now is just 3 megapixels left. And you have to be careful with that because the pixels do go away quite quickly. And my general guideline would be to never crop more than half of the height or half of the width of the photo. Because if you crop away more than half, you're typically going to lose too many pixels. And another thing to keep in mind is that if the photo is high quality, as this photo is, then you can crop the photo more. But if you have any quality issues before cropping, they will be magnified after you crop the photo. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But now, let's look at how we can crop this particular photo. And what stands out to me here is the lady. And I want the crop to be such that the lady will stand out the most in the photo. So she's the main subject. And when a person is walking through the frame, you always want to leave more space in front of the subject, which is what we now have. But whatever cropping I do, I want to preserve that. So I would not want to crop this image in such a way where the lady is in center, for example, because that would not keep the original composition where the lady has more space in front of her than behind her. So this is not an option. What I also like about this photo are the strong shadows, so I'd like to emphasize those as much as I can. But there are certain things about this photo that I'd prefer to not be there. For example, the security camera here at the top, I don't like that. And if I can just cut it out, why not do it? The more you can simplify your photos and remove unnecessary distractions, the better these photos are going to look. Now, for this particular image, I intend to post it on social media, so I'm going to go ahead and select the square aspect ratio. To do that, I need to tap this icon here at the bottom of the screen, and all the aspect ratios come up. Now I'm just going to select square, and I'll work with squares from this point forward. Now I'll just tap anywhere on the image, and now I can keep looking at the full photo. So if I'm going to do a square, the first thing that I want to do is to make sure I cut out that camera at the top. I just don't want it in the photo. So I'm going to gently drag the top part of the image, and my goal is to just cut out the security camera. Now, if I think about where to position the subject, I want to make sure that the subject is on the right-hand side of the frame, like so, because that way there's more space in front of her. And finally, an important decision I have to make is about this line that separates the shadow from the brightly illuminated parts of the image. And what I've discovered over the years is that if these lines originate from the corner of the image, like they do at the top left-hand corner, that just looks really appealing in terms of composition. So when I have some really strong lines, like I do in this photo, when possible, I try to have these lines originate exactly from the corner of the photo. And I've found that this can really make the composition more harmonious. So I've accomplished that goal at the top left, but if we look at the bottom right, you'll see that the shadow doesn't quite originate from the corner right now. So I'm going to attempt to fix that, and to do that, I'll have to make the image just a tiny bit smaller. So I'll drag it by the right-hand side now. And now the whole square box is just a little bit smaller, but I think this might be enough to allow me to position the lines in the corners exactly how I want them to be. Now, the important thing to keep in mind is that it's worth spending time on cropping, and it's worth to practice this and to get it exactly right. I think I've done a good job. I like how the subject is positioned in the frame. I like how the lines originate from the two corners. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this effect using the check mark at bottom right. Now if I look at the photo we just cropped, I'm very happy with the result, but to me it seems that I could have done the bottom right corner just a little bit more accurately. So let me show you how you can go back and return to the crop that you've already applied to an image. So on the top of the screen, you'll see this icon right here, and if you tap there, you have a lot of different options. You can undo an edit, you can revert the image to its original state, or you can view edits, which is what I'm going to select. And the view edits now shows me all the steps I've taken this image through. So we start with the original, and then we've cropped the image. And those are the 2 steps we've done. That's it. But sometimes you'll see more steps here on the right-hand side. So the crop step is selected, and if I want to return to the crop and to do it again, I can tap my finger on crop again, and I have the option to delete, which is the trash can icon, and that will just remove the crop altogether. But I don't want that. I want to modify the crop, and for that I'll select the other option, which is the 3 sliders icon. And now I'm back into the crop module, and I can readjust the crop we already did. And I'm going to do this really carefully to make sure that the lines originate exactly from the corners, just the way I want them to be. So I think this should do the trick. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the edit again. And now I'm really happy about how this image has been cropped. Now you'll notice that I spent a few minutes on this, and you'll also notice how careful I was about how the different elements are positioned in the frame. And this is the type of care you want to use when you're cropping. The more careful you are at the cropping stage, the better the composition will be in the end. So take some time to do this right. Now we're almost done, and I'm happy about how we've modified the crop. So I'm going to tap back at the top left-hand corner, and we're back to the home screen. And what I want to do now is to quickly wrap up this edit with a quick adjustment in Tune Image. So I'll open Tune Image, and I think by this point you're already starting to see a pattern. Whenever you do some kind of edits, you want to do these edits first, and then when you're almost done, you go to Tune Image, and that's where you finish off the editing process. So in Tune Image, there are just a couple of things I'd like to do, and the first thing is the shadows. So you'll see that about most of the image is covered in shadows, and I'd like to emphasize these shadows even more, because I like these shadows, and I think if I make them more extreme, then the contrast between what's illuminated by sunlight and what's in the shadows will really stand out. So to do that, I'm just going to select Shadows, and I'm going to decrease shadows. And I'm going to be quite extreme here. I'm going to go all the way down to -50 or so. Now, obviously, the histogram shows that we have a lot of black pixels, and that's indeed the case. But I'm really happy about how contrasted the image is and how this type of edit really emphasizes the contrast between sunlight and shadow. And in particular, I like how the blue clothes of the woman stand out against the dark background. Now, I could go lower, but then everything will just become black, and that's not good. And the reason I chose -50 is because at -50, you can still see a lot of detail here on the ground. For example, you can see the beautiful cobblestones, but it's dark enough to really emphasize the difference between the shadows and the illuminated parts. And now that I'm almost done, I'll just quickly select Saturation, and I'd like to emphasize these colors even more. So what I'm going to do is increase saturation. Not too much. I want the colors to look natural, but at +30, I think I'm getting really strong, really powerful colors that still look natural to the human eye. So let's do a quick before and after. So this is before Tune Image, and this is the after version, which looks so much better. So I'll apply the edits, and let's do another before and after. And this time, you'll see the original photo we started with before any cropping, and as I release my finger, you'll see the final version. So I'll go ahead and save our work, and this is how you can crop your photos using the Snapseed app.